What is up, guys? James McWilliams here for the Jet Up podcast, part of the Roster Up Media Network. We are here with episode 37, and this episode will be our first episode that we record with video, so you can actually find this on YouTube at the Roster Up Media YouTube channel, which I will include a link with in the description below. And then of course, you'll be able to access it where you normally listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, wherever you guys listen to podcasts. It will be available as just audio. But if you'd like to see me, wearing my Jets gear, in my setup here, got the mic, ready to rock, we're trying video out. So looking forward to what we can do with video as we go forward, but excited to kick this off. As we look at week one, we are officially in week one of the NFL regular season for 2022. Really exciting. Obviously, everybody looks forward to week one. For the Jets, it's a tough start, man. We're going to talk about it. Week one against the Ravens. We actually have a recording from our Raven Up podcast host, Jeff Tolson, that will drop at the end of this podcast, where he answers some of our questions as we lead up to Sunday. I'm so excited for you guys to hear that. So stay tuned in the episode for that. And go check out the Raven Up podcast if you'd like to hear more about the Ravens, especially as we play them this week. So we're going to start this out with a preseason recap. This is our first episode of the season. We had some off-season episodes. So if you joined us for those, we appreciate that. But we'll start with the preseason. So obviously played 3 games, won all 3. Nice to see the Jets win some games. But we haven't lost a preseason game since 2019, and yet those results have not really translated to the field in the regular season. So I would not put too much stock in our preseason performance in terms of record. Obviously, you have starters against backups, backups against starters. It's kind of a mess, and it doesn't even seem like the evaluations are really based off the games. It's more based off practice, as we saw some guys get cut. So we'll talk about some of those surprises in terms of cuts, guys we thought that played well enough in the preseason to have made this roster, and guys that really stink and should not have made this roster. So we'll get into that. But like I said, went 3-0. Nice to see. What went well for us? Some of those new additions, I think, went well for us. Sauce looked solid in the limited action he had. I think we saw a little glimpse of what we might get out of Breece Hall, and we'll talk more about him in this episode. But really got excited to see him run the ball a little bit. And then, saw some of the pass rush improved with guys like Carl Lawson coming back, Jermaine Johnson, Michael Clemens, even Quinnen Williams finally feels like he might have enough edge help for him to get to the quarterback and not be the key for the offensive line to stop, where he can actually dominate like we've been hoping he can. I think we might finally have it. Might finally have a good enough edge rush for Quinnen to really take off and be the player we know he can be. So I was really excited to see all that. What went wrong in the preseason? So a few things went wrong. Zach Wilson obviously getting hurt. Big scare. People were like, up all night, couldn't sleep. They were, just flat out depressed, if I'm being honest. And I sat there and I'm kind of like, I think he might be okay, but at the same time, Zach Wilson still needs to prove himself. So I wasn't sitting there so devastated that we'd lost Tom Brady or someone like that. At the same time, I think it would be a real bummer if we couldn't watch Zach play this year with a major injury. Was really not looking forward to having to watch Joe Flacco all season. At the same time, I think he's talented still. He can still win football games and play good football. But, you want to see what you have. You want to see what you have in a player like Zach. So I think for me, it was more about being able to evaluate Zach this year than being totally devastated that we lost this absolute star quarterback, because I think that's yet to be seen. His recovery seems to be going well, and we'll see what happens there. But I think we should just take it easy when these things happen. It's not the end of the world. Run game, I think, was average. Like I said, some glimpses of Breece, and had some players like Zonovan Knight, who looks solid, and players Even Michael Carter had his hiccups with some fumbles, but I think he'll be fine. But kind of didn't get much of a push from that O-line. Really looking for more there. Obviously, they're going to have to gel. Really, it's a mostly a new unit in terms of having a new guard in Laken Tomlinson and a new tackle in Dwayne Brown on the line. So it's going to take a little time for them to gel. And then what else went wrong? The starting D. So it had some positives, but I think it was alarming to watch a player like Jalen Hurts, who I think is better than most people think, just drive down the field on our starting D right away. And that was a little alarming. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Now to those cuts that I mentioned. So surprise cuts. I think for me, the biggest surprise cut was Calvin Jackson, sort of an undrafted free agent story. Really showed a lot, I thought, in the preseason, in the games. Caught a couple game winners from Streveler. Obviously, we all love Streveler. Everyone was devastated when he got cut, except for me. I wasn't devastated. I was definitely surprised. Thought he played well enough to get a roster spot. I thought he beat Mike White out. But my surprise cut was Calvin Jackson. I really felt like he deserved to be one of those 6 wide receivers that made the team. He did get added to the practice squad, so it's not the end of him with the Jets. But I think he showed some serious separation ability and speed. So would like to see him at least stick around on the practice squad and hopefully get his way back onto the roster. Another surprise cut happened yesterday, I believe. Zonovan Knight, who I mentioned earlier, running back. He also, I believe, was undrafted. Yeah, he was. And he showed a nice preseason. I felt like, we have 3 running backs now on the team. One of those is Ty Johnson. And I understand Ty Johnson brings some different elements to the game. But he doesn't do much for you on special teams, where I think Zonovan Knight does. So would have liked to see us keep someone who's a little more versatile like Zonovan Knight. And obviously, Ty Johnson had his woes last year, so cost us some drive-killing drops, things like that. So don't love that Ty Johnson is that third running back versus Zonovan Knight, who might be a little bit more unique and interesting and younger. So we'll see. The biggest surprise non-cut, and I think this was on everybody's list, was Ashton Davis. This is clearly a sign of Joe Douglas favoring a draft pick. Our safeties really aren't the best, but Ashton Davis is the worst. That dude, man, someone said on Twitter that he must have some pictures, some not safe for work pictures of Joe Douglas, because that guy does not deserve to be on this roster. He's basically a track star playing in the NFL. And he's just not good enough at safety. He's a liability when it comes to stopping the run. He gets beat deep all the time, misses tackles left and right. I have no idea why this guy is wearing a uniform for us. But until we get better players in here, I guess maybe we'll just keep these draft picks around. But I don't think he should be on the roster. All right, moving on. So that's the end of our first segment, talking about the preseason. I think there were definitely some ups and downs, but the regular season's here. So let's preview week 1. We have the Baltimore Ravens on the schedule. Like I mentioned, not the easiest matchup. Their defense not quite what it used to be, but still very good. They have a few players coming back from injury, and we'll talk about those guys. But as far as the biggest threats that I see this Sunday as we face the Ravens, obviously the biggest one is Lamar Jackson. He's the biggest threat hands down. If we lose, it will be because we failed to contain Lamar and his legs. Not his arm as much, but his legs. He's got more talent in his arm than most people give him credit for, but his legs are where we'll get killed. We're notoriously bad against running QBs. Josh Allen ran all over us the last 2 seasons. We have to believe additions like Jordan Whitehead to our defense, Quan Alexander, Carl Lawson coming back, and Jermaine Johnson being added will reduce some of that damage done by the run. But ultimately, I just feel a little bit nervous about a run-first team with our defense. I just always feel like we struggle mightily against that. And I don't know if that will stop, especially against a team that is so good at it in the Baltimore Ravens. Outside of Lamar, I think Mark Andrews, he had the most targets last year at the tight end position in the league. And we suck against tight ends. We can't cover them. We always struggle with that. My hope is that some of these new linebackers like Kwan Alexander, some of these additions on the back end, like a Jordan Whitehead, and these guys will help us contain some of those tight ends this year. But until we show it on the field, somebody like a Mark Andrews is a mismatch for us. We are not notoriously good at covering tight ends. So we'll have to see how that goes this Sunday. Rashad Bateman is my third threat here. I think he's kind of underperformed based on where he was drafted the past couple of years. But he has a lot of talent. He's a big body. And I think he has the ability to have a big rebound this year. Who's going to cover him? I think that's what matters for us. He's a big guy. I would throw Sauce on him. So, big corner, big receiver. Let's see how it goes. And Sauce probably has that speed advantage and quickness advantage. So I think if it were me, I'd put Sauce on him. But DJ Reed is also a good corner. We can see what happens there. And our defensive scheme obviously affects who's on who. So I don't expect him to torch us, but he can be a mismatch at times. But I do think our secondary is in a much better position to stop a guy like him this year. Some of the biggest additions I have for the Ravens this year are Marcus Williams. So he was a free agent that a lot of us Jets fans wanted, we coveted. We hoped that Joe Douglas would sign. He did end up signing with the Ravens, obviously, one of the top 3 safeties in the NFL. So we'll be going against him this weekend. And then you have a Kyle Hamilton who was added in the draft. So their safety duo was pretty scary on the Ravens side of the ball. It'll be hard to throw deep. And also some of those outside runs. It's just going to be a little bit tougher for us in certain circumstances with that much talent on the back end. And then you have Marcus Peters, who's back from injury. I do think he's a solid corner, but, he's kind of not been around lately. So I think, he's been forgotten about a little bit. He'll have to come back. We'll see if he's back to form. And you know what? Their defense is good. It's a good defense. They're not a great defense, but they're a good defense. And they have a couple other pieces on their defensive line who are just really solid. So veterans who know what they're doing. So, I think we'll have to see how it goes. I think our offensive line will be okay against their pass rush. They don't have a formidable pass rush. I think Odafe Owe is the guy that they're counting on. Really not, a game wrecker, but he's good. So we'll have to contain him, and we will see how that goes. But I think we'll be okay in that regard. As far as the New York Jets go, biggest threats, I think, going into this game, I think for us, it's Breece Hall. I mentioned him. To me, he's going to be this season's breakout star for the Jets. Best running back in the draft. We got him. He'll be splitting a lot of carries with Michael Carter, but he's better than Michael Carter for sure. They possess a similar skill set, but Breece is kind of like the next level of that skill set. So I see him eventually getting more carries, right? I think it'll start more than that 50-50, and then it'll start to widen that gap a little bit to a 60-40, 70-30 split as the season goes. But I think he's one of those guys that can make one cut and get upfield and be gone. So really excited to see Breece Hall play. The wide receiver group, I think this is another big threat for me. We have now Garrett Wilson added to Elijah Moore and Corey Davis and Braxton Berrios. That's a solid core. It's the best core wide receiver group we've had in a long, long time. I think the last time I would say we were this good at wide receiver was Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker's big year, where they both went for over 1,000 yards and had double-digit touchdowns each. I do see us being maybe not as talented as that just yet. The potential's there, but the depth is really good. It's a great group, really young and quick and just good locker room guys. I think it's going to be a great group for us for the next few years. So I'm excited for that this Sunday. And then Carl Lawson is back from injury, so he's a huge threat, obviously. We've been itching for a year and a half to see Carl Lawson play football for the New York Jets, and we will finally get to see that this Sunday against the Ravens. So excited to see him, and he comes back with more help. Like I said, we got Jermaine Johnson, the rest of that D-line, Michael Clemens, Quinnen Williams. It's John Franklin Myers. It's a great group. I think it's one of the best groups in the NFL. top 10 at least, and we'll see how they perform this Sunday against the Ravens. Now, the biggest additions for the Jets, I think I mentioned him, Sauce Gardner. He's going to be the highlight this year, I think. The 4th overall pick. We'll have to see how he does. I think he'll live up to the hype, but Sunday is different than the preseason, and we will have to see how he does when the lights are on. So I'm excited to watch him play, and I think he'll have no trouble this week. As we go further in the season, he'll face some tougher matchups. Laken Tomlinson and Dwayne Brown. So those are two massive, literally, additions to the Jets. I think they'll help us mightily in the running offense, as well as passing. Just really experienced, proven guys next to guys like AVT and George Fant, who played well last year. So excited for that offensive line group. I think we're in good shape there. Depth is a little scary, to be honest with you, but in a bad way. But we'll hopefully be healthy and continue to be able to protect and open those running lanes. And then my last big addition is Kwan Alexander. So I mentioned him also. He's, he's in kind of a prove it year. So I see him as having a chip on his shoulder, but also having the talent to really be a star in this defense. He hits really hard, as we saw against the Giants in the preseason. Just absolutely decleated the Giants running back and dislodged the ball. I mean, it was insane. I mean, that highlight's been just on repeat for me. So I think Kwan Alexander is going to kill it this year for the Jets, along with CJ Mosley and Quincy Williams. All right, so what are my biggest questions for the Jets? As we go into this season, as we go into this game specifically, who's going to play QB? As I record this, the decision has not yet been made whether Zach will suit up. Gut feeling is they're going to hold him out. And, he just had surgery, and this is one game. Of course, we all want to see Zach Wilson play football and start to evaluate if he's going to be the guy for us. But as far as I see it, let the veteran Flacco play this game. He's fully capable of playing good football still. And I think we give Zach at least one more week to heal up and have a full week of practice before he suits up for Sunday. I think for my questions for Zach are, if he plays, will he elevate this team? I think there's a lot of people that just want to see Zach, but it's time for him to play football that elevates this team and, shows us that he was worthy of a first round pick. The training wheels are off. He's got a year under his belt and a full off season under his belt. It's if he starts looking like a rookie again, it's a problem. He's got to start showing that he's comfortable, that he understands what he's reading, starts to make plays. He's got a lot of talent, but a lot of guys have a lot of talent and they don't turn it into NFL success. So for me, would love to see Zach play, but also if Zach plays, he better play well, because I'm not here to just watch him go out there and, look like a rookie. If Flacco plays, my question is, can he just play clean football? Allow some of this new talent on the offense to win the day for him. And, hey, it's the Flacco revenge game. Let's go get a W. All right, now, our next segment, predictions for the season. I think as we go forward, we all want the Jets to start out hot every year. A lot of years I feel like maybe they can. But unfortunately, the first half of the year is really a rough draw for us. It's going to be hard to win more than 2 or 3 games in the first 10. Ideally, you want easier teams earlier in the schedule to sort of tune up and get used to playing together, gel as a team, get some wins under your belt, get some confidence. But unfortunately, the NFL decided not to give us that this year. And it is a tough start. So my goal, for the Jets for the first 8 to 10 games is try to get 1 or 2 wins in there that you're not expected to get. Compete in games against good teams and occasionally pull one out that you're not supposed to win. Because I think you can beat a couple of those teams in there and come out of that first 10 games with 3 wins, maybe 3-7 after 10. And I could definitely see 4 wins, 4 additional wins through the next 7, finishing with a 7-10 record. That's my prediction for the season, is 7-10. I could see us beating the Browns, the Dolphins at least once, the Pats at least once, the Bears, the Lions, the Jags, and the Seahawks. Those are my W's on the schedule if all goes well. Do I think we can sneak one more in there? Probably. Not sure against 2, but we could probably get at least one more in there if we have a little bit more success than we're expecting. But honestly, my keys to being good this year for the Jets, or my keys to a successful season for us, beat your divisional opponents. We are 0-12 the last 2 years against the AFC East. We always talk about, we'll split with the Dolphins, we'll split with the Pats. We have to actually do it. So I don't think we're going to beat the Bills this year, but I do think we should at least beat the Dolphins and the Patriots one time each. It's not too much to ask. At the same time, it's not a gimme. Those teams are improving every single year. The Dolphins have added some serious weapons, and their offense can be very scary regardless of what we think about Tua. He has a lot of really good weapons. So I think we have to get one from each of those teams, and maybe sneak one from a really good team that's not expecting it. Get 7 or 8 wins and then take that as a win for the Jets this season. I don't think we're making a playoff run. Excuse me. I don't think we're making a playoff run this year. It'd be great to be in the hunt. I think that would be a successful season for us. I think some of us have to just realize the team is not ready to win a Super Bowl. So stop acting like that's actually in the cards as a goal for us this year. I think having realistic goals is important. I think, setting good expectations is important. So for me, it's, like I said, 7 to 8 wins, sneak one off a good team, see improvement from Zach Wilson, don't lose all your divisional games, and be in the hunt around the November time. That'd be fun. Be nice to be in the hunt for once, playing meaningful football around the Thanksgiving time. So I think it's absolutely possible. I think we have the talent on the team to do it now. It's just putting it together. So excited to see what they do this year. Excited to face the Ravens. And excited for football, man. Football's here. Get excited, people. It's back. It's time. Let's do it. Jet up. All right, guys. Well, as promised, we have a little bit of audio from Jeff at the Raven Up podcast as he answers some questions for us leading up to Sunday's game between the Jets and the Ravens. If you're on YouTube right now watching this is going to be audio only, but you'll see some sound waves on the screen as it plays. And if you're not on YouTube, then this doesn't matter. You can just listen in. So I hope you guys enjoy. I appreciate Jeff for doing this for us leading up to Sunday. Enjoy.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? What's up, Jets fans? This is Jeff Tolson from the Raven Up Pod. Happy to be breaking down some Ravens, previewing the game this Sunday, Ravens versus Jets, and just kind of giving an overview of the Ravens season. Thanks to James and the guys over from the Jet Up Pod crew for having me on this week. They sent over some questions, and I'm going to break down some storylines, some guidelines, some questions that James sent over. So let's dive right into it to start off. What is the outlook for the 2022 Ravens? With lots of injuries last year, can Baltimore get back to playing meaningful football late in the season? So, yeah, that's the goal. That's the outlook for the Ravens this year. They want to be playing meaningful games. They want to be competing for the division, or at least a wild card berth, but ideally they want to be competing for the division late in the year. That's what they've done with Lamar Jackson at quarterback, and that's what they hope to do this year if they can stay healthy. One of the biggest bummers about all these injuries they had, I would say, is some of these season-ending injuries from last year have actually carried over into this year. So a big part of the Ravens season is going to rely on, guys like Ronnie Stanley, coming back. He played one game last year. He's still dealing with his ankle injury. He's probably not even going to play week one. Marcus Peters, missed all last year with a torn ACL. J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, these guys who suffered season-ending injuries early on last year, and they're still, not quite 100%, or they're working their way back to 100%. So a big part of the Ravens season is going to be on those guys. How quickly can they get back to full strength? And then also, can they stay healthy throughout the season? Last year was just so unfortunate with the amount of injuries. It was historically bad. So, yeah, that's the biggest thing I'm looking at. Can the injury luck kind of go our way? Can Lamar Jackson continue to play at a high level? He got off to such a good start during the season last year, and then he kind of had the 2-3 game stretch where he looked, really bad, not really himself. And then he got hurt. So the last time we saw Lamar Jackson on a football field, he really wasn't playing his best ball. So I'm really excited to see him out there week one. But yeah, that's the outlook. On paper, the Ravens have a really good roster. I would say they're not quite at the level of the Chiefs and the Bills. I would put them kind of the top of the AFC, maybe with a couple of those teams in the AFC West, but they're kind of in that second tier. They should be competing, I would think, with the Bengals to win the division or at least make the playoffs as a wild card. Next question. Outside of Lamar and Mark Andrews, who will be the key to success for the Ravens this season? Maybe someone barely anyone is talking about. So I mentioned him earlier, but I'm going to come back to him, and I'm going to say Ronnie Stanley. So Stanley's a guy. He was, I think the Ravens took him sixth overall, first round pick, sixth overall, and that was like 2016, I want to say. And then he played really well over his first 2 years, and then really I think it was 2019 developed into he was like a first team All Pro left tackle, and then in 2020 signed a big contract extension, almost $100 million. And yeah, he was really at the top of his game. And then a week later, he shatters his ankle. This is 2020. He battles his way back, after a long off season. 2021 comes around. He plays week one and then never plays again the rest of the season due to that ankle injury. So Ronnie Stanley is working his way back. Probably, like I said, not going to play week one, but he's just so important to this team. Anytime you have a dominant left tackle like Stanley is when he's healthy, it goes such a long way in the running game and the passing game. And really for the Ravens, their running game is obviously so important. So when you have him out there, he's when healthy, he might never quite be that dominant player that he was before his ankle surgery, but he was just steady, run game presence. Like wasn't a huge mauler, but just really dominant in the run game. But then in his pass protection, just almost perfect. Like I think his 2019 season, he maybe gave up one sack all year, very few penalties, and just really playing at a high level. So to me, it's Ronnie Stanley, and yeah, he might not play week one, week two, but if you can get him back early on in the season and have him play at a high level, he'll really just be able to help that running game take off, and then have Lamar be much comfier, much more at ease in the pocket, not have to worry about so many guys being all around him as he is trying to pass the ball. So to me, outside of Lamar, Mark Andrews, Ronnie Stanley is super important. I'll also throw out another name. People are talking about him a little bit because he's a first round pick last year, but Rashad Bateman is super important to the Ravens, I would say. Even though they don't, throw the ball as much, especially to their wide receivers, you look at that wide receiver room and you're going to need somebody to step up. So Bateman, he flashed at times last year, but he really needs to step into that wide receiver one role now that Hollywood Brown is in Arizona. And yeah, listen, the Ravens can only run the ball so much. You still need to be able to move the ball down the field through the air. And besides Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman is hopefully going to be that guy. So I'm really looking at Ronnie Stanley. Rashad Bateman's another one who will be super important to the Ravens' success this year. Next question. If you were coaching the Jets this weekend, how would you scheme up your defense to stop the Ravens' offense? And how would you attack the Ravens D if you're the Jets? Where are the weak spots? So to start out, how would I scheme up the defense to stop the Ravens offense? I would say most important, you got to stop the running game first. And on top of that, you really want to stop Lamar from picking up, big chunk plays or big yards on the ground, especially early on. Dobbins, J.K. Dobbins, maybe is going to play week one. He's been practicing more. Gus Edwards is on the PUP list, so he won't be playing. And then the Ravens at running back, you really have Dobbins, who's a question mark, and then Mike Davis, kind of a veteran sort of guy, signed him from Atlanta. last year, and then they just signed Kenyon Drake, who probably will play Week 1, and then Justice Hill. Those are their running backs. So if I'm trying to stop the Ravens right now, I just want to stop Lamar on the ground first, and then make their running backs beat them. And then once you stop the run game, you got to stop their passing attack, which for me, I don't just want to sit back and maybe let Lamar pick me apart because he can beat teams with his arms. He's shown that over the few years he's been in the NFL. But what I would do is just blitz him like crazy. You saw a couple games last year. One of them was Miami. I think the Browns did it one game where they just blitzed him like crazy, and the Ravens had no answer for it. So for me, I want to stop Lamar's running attack, in addition to the running backs, but don't let Lamar beat you with his legs. And then when the Ravens are throwing the ball and in passing situations, I'm blitzing them like crazy until you can find out if the Ravens somehow in the offseason or in training camp found some answers, because teams did it last year and they had a ton of success. And yeah, this is a copycat league. So teams saw Lamar was vulnerable to the blitz. The Ravens offense didn't really have any answers, and teams just kept blitzing them. So that's what I'm doing if I'm trying to coach the defense there. How would you attack the Ravens D if you're the Jets? Where are the weak spots? I would say probably the edge rushers are some of the weak spots. The Ravens have Odafe Owe. He's the first round draft pick from last year. He had like 5 sacks last year and should be in store for a pretty big second year leap. But after him, it's him and Justin Houston. They really don't have many edge rushers, even on their roster. So um, I'm not really worried about the Ravens edge rushers. If I'm Jets, I think they have a decent enough offensive line where they can kind of um, keep those guys at bay. And I'm checking to see if Marlon Humphrey, he had a pretty good year last year, but gave up a lot of plays. Marcus Peters obviously is coming back from an ACL injury. Their secondary gave up, I think they were 32nd. They were literally last in the league last year in passing yards allowed. So I'm testing that secondary. I mean, the Ravens did add Marcus Williams in free agency. They drafted Kyle Hamilton as well. They're getting guys back, but it's very unproven. The last time the Ravens were on the field again, they were giving up like 300 plus yards per game passing almost. So I would try to attack their secondary and see if they can find some success there with some of the Jets wide receivers. So next question here. Speaking of Kyle Hamilton, is rookie Kyle Hamilton living up to the hype so far, or is it true that a safety can't really move the needle for a team? Um, yeah, good question. I would say Hamilton, honestly, he's been a little quiet at times so far this preseason. I think he's dealt with a couple nagging injuries on and off during camp. It's also his role is going to be interesting because the Ravens, as I just mentioned, they did sign Marcus Williams to a $70 million contract, give him a bunch of guaranteed money. So obviously he's going to be a starter. And then they have Chuck Clark, who's been a starter for several years, and he also wears the green dot he calls every play. So I'm not sure how often Kyle Hamilton is going to play early on, unless there's an injury. But three safety looks are becoming more and more common in the NFL, so he will play a bit, but it's just depends on a couple of different situations, personnel groups, things like that. So, yeah, I mean, I think Kyle Hamilton's a guy who's going to show up more when the games matter. He's going to make impactful plays, but the Ravens, I would say, are honestly just kind of waiting to see what they have in Kyle Hamilton. I don't know if fans, I mean, coaches might have a good idea, but fans are kind of waiting to see, like, okay, this guy was rumored to be top 5, top 10 pick, fell to the Ravens. Yeah, we're going to find out what we have. And is it true that a safety can't really move the needle for a team? I feel like that's more of a myth right now. Obviously, safeties haven't been valued super much recently, but we have seen a couple big deals. I think Minka Fitzpatrick just got signed to a big deal where he got big money. The safety value is increasing. You're starting to see guys get bigger contracts, and I think that's because the NFL is such a pass happy league where you got to be able to stop the passing attack, and safeties are doing that. So, like I said, Marcus Williams just got signed $70 million. I think you're going to see him make a really big impact this year. Move the needle to be determined, but the Ravens are definitely hoping he'll be able to move the needle for sure. Next question. Who is one Ravens player who had a strong training camp slash preseason that will make a big impact on Sunday? Let's go with Ravens fourth round rookie pick, tight end Isaiah Likely. He was not super well known. I think he went to college. It was Coastal Carolina, and he's been really good in the preseason and in training camp. I think it was the second preseason game. He had like 100 yards, 8 catches, and a touchdown. And then they sat him out the entire second half of that game, and then he didn't play the third game. And I saw a couple of people on Twitter being like, "If you're a fourth round rookie tight end and you're resting with the starters during the preseason, you've done something right." And yeah, Isaiah Likely has really put himself in a position to make an impact on Sunday, week one. Obviously, the Ravens have Mark Andrews, but the Ravens offense and Mark Andrews, Greg Roman, he loves being able to use those tight ends, and Lamar also loves throwing to tight ends. So I'm gonna go with Isaiah Likely. I don't think he's gonna have 8 catches for 100 yards again, but I could easily see him grabbing 4 or 5 balls for 60, 70 yards and maybe catching a touchdown. So I'm gonna go with Isaiah Likely again. He had a really strong training camp in preseason. The Ravens are really high on him, and hopefully he can ride that momentum into week one. And last question here, the score prediction. So after some thought, I was thinking about this. I'm gonna go with the Ravens win 23-13. It will be interesting to see. I'm recording this late Tuesday night. Seems like the Ravens are probably going to be facing Joe Flacco. First time they will have faced him since he left the team. Maybe there's a chance Zach Wilson plays, but if I had to guess, the Jets are probably going to take it easy with him and let Flacco get the start. So that'll be super interesting to see the Ravens play against Flacco. He's actually looked decent during training camp and during preseason, but I just think this will be more of a defensive game. Ravens will be um, really hungry to prove that last year was kind of a fluke and their defense really just was decimated by injuries. So I think those guys are going to be hungry and ready to play. And I think the Ravens will be able to do enough offensively. I think Mark Andrews has a big day. I mentioned Isaiah Likely. Maybe Rashad Bateman can make a couple plays. So I'm going to go with 23-13 Ravens, but just super excited to have football back. Again, appreciate the guys over at the Jet Up Pod for having me on. And yeah, let's have a fun game to watch on Sunday. Thanks a lot, guys.